Hi, this is Sindoni. I'd like to thank everyone for watching the videos I have created on YouTube. As you know, creating videos is a time-consuming effort. If you have enjoyed what I've shared with you throughout the years and would like to find a way to give back, you can be supportive by shopping on my website portal with over 3,500 partner stores that you're probably already shopping at. And don't forget to sign in and register on the site so you can start earning cash back. What can be better than shopping online? Getting paid to shop online. Get paid up to 50% and get cash back at thousands of stores you're already shopping at. And get exclusive deals you can't find anywhere else. Invite your friends to shop and get paid whenever they buy stuff. If you need to kick up your style, done. Want to capture the moment? Picture the savings. Ready to hit the trail? Compare prices and gear up. The more stuff you buy, the more you'll get paid. Sign up for free at marketamerica.com/StevensWorld and start earning cash back in seconds. Shop, save, and earn cash back only at marketamerica.com/StevensWorld. In this program, I will put the spotlight on an event that occurred on August 14, 2003. This story can be found in the archives of the NewYorkTimes.com. It was written by James Barron and published on August 15, 2003. A surge of electricity to western New York and Canada touched off a series of power failures and enforced blackouts that left parts of at least 8 states in the Northeast without electricity. The widespread failures provoked the evacuation of office buildings, stranded thousands of commuters, and flooded some hospitals with patients suffering in the stifling heat. In an instant or in a blink of an eye, shortly after 4 p.m., the grid that distributes electricity to the eastern United States became overloaded. As circuit breakers tripped at generating stations from New York to Michigan and into Canada, millions of people were instantly caught up in the largest blackout in American history. In New York City, power was shut off by officials struggling to head off a wider blackout. Cleveland and Detroit went dark, as did Toronto and sections of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. In some areas, the power problems were scattered. The lights remain on, oddly enough, in Albany, the capital of New York, and in Buffalo, New York, but not in nearby suburbs. Officials worked into the night to put the grid back in operation and restore electrical service. Mayor Michael Bloomberg said that the power was back on in parts of Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Queens by 11 p.m. that evening, but not Manhattan. We're certainly not out of the woods yet, the mayor said. The blackout began just after the stock exchanges had closed for the day, a slow summer day of relatively light trading as thousands of workers were about to head home. Office workers, who were still at their desks, watched their computer monitors blink off without warning on a hot and hazy afternoon. Soon hospitals and government buildings were switched on to backup generators to keep essential equipment operating, and the police were evacuating people trapped in elevators. Airports throughout the affected states suffered serious disruptions, including the 3 major airports in the New York metropolitan region, but did not close. Still, delays and cancellations rippled all the way to San Francisco. Federal Aviation Administration officials said that the airports in the affected states had switched to emergency power. They said that airliners in the air had not been in danger, although many were rerouted to terminals beyond the blackout. Thousands of subway passengers in New York City had to be evacuated from tunnels, and commuter trains also came to a halt. Governor George Pataki said that 600 trains were stranded. Officials said that the cause of the blackout was under investigation, but that terrorism did not appear to have played a role. Tom Ridge, the Homeland Security Secretary, met with his advisors in Washington, but Mayor Bloomberg said there had been no evidence of any terrorism whatsoever. And here is where our story takes a bizarre twist and turn. The office of the Canadian Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, initially said that the power problems were caused by lightning in New York State, but later retracted that. Canadian officials later expressed uncertainty about the exact cause, but continued to insist the problem began on the United States side of the border. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission said that the 7 nuclear plants in New York and New Jersey and 2 in the Midwest had shut down automatically when the failure occurred. Telephone service was disrupted, especially calls to and from a cellular phone. Most of the problems, telephone companies officials said, had to do with heavy use. Officials said the trouble was compounded by power failures at some cellular transmitters. Cash dispensing teller machines were also knocked out, so people did not have cash on hand, could not buy flashlights, batteries, or other supplies. The power failure exacted a variety of tolls in Michigan and Ohio, tying up the freeways in Detroit, forcing the cancellation of minor league baseball games in Toledo, Ohio, and sending Jennifer M. Granholm, the governor of Michigan, into emergency meetings without the use of lights or computers. In Times Square, New York, billboards instantly went dark and the city was left without traffic lights and the usual sounds of rush hour. Volunteers directed traffic with mixed success. Some stores in Manhattan closed as cashiers fumbled with registers that no longer totted up purchases. The Metropolitan Museum art emptied out, but not before some art lovers had pulled flashlights from backpacks and purses and trained them on paintings. In a city still jittery from the September 11th terror attack, some people worried as they tried to find their way home. All I could think of here was, here we go again. It's just like September 11th, said Catherine Donnelly, who works at the New York Stock Exchange. New York Governor Pataki said that he had ordered the National Guard to assist state and local authorities, but New York City officials said the Guard's aid was not necessary. Police officials in the city said they first responded as if the power failure had been the work of terrorists, and with the concern that the city was suddenly vulnerable. Heavily armored officers were sent to likely targets, and emergency command operations were begun in every borough. The officials said that the city was mostly calm in the first hours of the blackout, and that every precinct in the city had moved to control traffic at critical intersections. So there was no air conditioning, no television, no computers. There was Times Square without its neon glow, and Broadway marquees without their incandescence. All the shows were canceled. So was the New York Mets game against the San Francisco Giants at Shea Stadium. And there was a skyline that had never looked quite the way it did last night. The long taut strings of the bridges were dark, the red eyes that usually blink at the very top not red, not blinking. As the lights came back on, officials estimated that 10% of the city's households again had power by 10 p.m. About that time, power was also restored in Newark, New Jersey, and Buffalo, New York. Governor Pataki declared a state of an emergency and went to the Office of Emergency Management at the State Police Headquarters in Albany, New York, where he said he would remain until power was totally restored. Governor Pataki reluctantly recalled one of the two major blackouts of the last 40 years in the Northeast, the 1965 power failure, which left an 80,000 square mile stretch of the United States and Canada without electricity for as much as 27 hours. It wasn't supposed to happen again, he said, and it has happened again. And there has to be some tough questions asked as to why. So let us now examine both of the incidents that Governor Pataki is referring to. The first being the November 9th, 1965 blackout, which began with an overloaded relay at a hydroelectric plant in Ontario, Canada. That plunged Toronto into darkness, then Syracuse, then 4 of the 5 boroughs of New York City, which had been drawing 300,000 kilowatts from the Niagara Mohawk utility in upstate New York. The lights stayed on in parts of Brooklyn and on Staten Island because of a generating station that was not knocked out. And the second blackout occurred on July 14, 1977. Lightning hit 2 Con Edison transmission lines north of New York City, tripping relays that soon shut down power plants in the New York metropolitan area. Parts of the city were dark for more than 25 hours, and there was widespread looting. Philip G. Harris, who was in charge of the consortium that oversees power distribution from New Jersey to the District of Columbia, said the exact cause of the blackout would not be known for some time. We have to get into the forensics of it, he said. There was high demand for electricity yesterday, he said, but it was not any hotter than we had last year. After following the events and reading the story very closely, I have come up with my own conclusions as to why the tough questions need to be asked, how this event could have happened. The slide you're looking at now is dated August 17th, 2003, which is Sunday, 3 days after the blackout. Major blackout. Investigators now believe the blackout began in Ohio. First Energy Corporation, which services 1.4 million people in the state, released a statement Saturday that 3 of its transmission lines tripped off at Unit 5 of their East Lake plant hours before the blackout and may have been the cause. Could these transmission lines have been deliberately tripped? And if so, what would be the reason? And on that same day, saboteurs caused a series of explosions that damaged oil and water pipelines in Iraq. And then on the following day of August 18, 2003, on Monday, War on Terrorism, Arab television airs an audio tape allegedly from an al-Qaeda official, Abdel Rahman al-Najdi, saying that Osama bin Laden and Taliban chief Mullah Omar are alive. The tape advocates Muslims to commit terrorist acts and fight the coalition forces in Iraq. And then the plot thickens. Terrorists associated with al-Qaeda release a statement in which it claims responsibility for the blackout. The statement says that the group acted on Osama bin Laden's orders. And that's when I heard the trumpeteers play, and the voices were heard saying, "Let the bullshit begin." So what is the moral to this story? I will now put up a calendar. There could be a major event looming on November 9th, for this is when the government plans to have a massive tsunami drill. With the Occupy Wall Street movement gaining strength and momentum, it seems like the endgame now is in order. The New World Order may be about to play its final card. So I would now like to ask the question, if a catastrophic Earth-based event such as an asteroid impact or natural mega disaster were to occur on a future date and world governments had advanced knowledge of such an event, would the populace be warned? And if the event were too catastrophic to recover from and people in dense population centers were left to fend for themselves, would world governments perform an extermination of some regions in advance to avoid the total mayhem of a dynamic breakdown of society into ultimate civil unrest? I felt it was my duty to inform you that on Wednesday, November 9, 2011, a strange series of events are set to take place that you should be informed about. Many events pertaining to the subject have already happened, which in turn lead up to this date and have been covered periodically by the Intel Hub. I'd like to start with a basic breakdown of some of the events that will lead to the fact that the United States government just ordered 44 million doses of the anthrax vaccine at a cost of over $1 billion of taxpayer money. Let's do the math, people. There are only 300 million people in America. Who will get the 44 million doses? It's a sure bet that no one in the Occupy Wall Street movement that is going on throughout the country will get any of the anthrax. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me to voice my concerns. Do not allow yourself to be fooled again. A word to the wise should be sufficient. I'd like to thank everyone for watching The Endgame.